Hey guys, I'm here to do my January wrap up today. January was an absolutely stupendous month for my reading. It's the most I've read in 1 month. Oh, okay, tripod, sorry. January was the most I've read in 1 month in absolutely ages, and I'm so proud of myself for doing so. I'm going to sort of do this by category because I read things in lots of different formats and styles this month. First of all, I am going to start with the audiobooks that I read, or listened to I should say. So first of all, I listened to We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, and I absolutely loved this one. Sometimes I kind of zoned out of it because I was doing other things when I was listening, which I think is always the issue with audiobooks. Like, I really just sit down and listen to an audiobook straight through, like I'm always doing something else, which can sometimes draw my concentration away from it. But on the whole, I really loved this, and I'm definitely going to be checking out some more of Shirley Jackson's writing and picking up some of her physical books, because I think in that way I'm going to get a better sense of her writing and how it flows rather than hearing it read. And this is also the case for the other audiobook that I listened to, which was The Birds by Daphne du Maurier. I didn't actually realise when I downloaded this one that it wasn't the book itself, it was a dramatisation. So the dramatisation was by Melissa Murray, and it was actually originally on Radio 4. So because of that, it was only sort of an hour long, and I just listened to it when I was on the bus one day. Even so, it was still really enjoyable. I just feel like it wasn't maybe the best example of Daphne du Maurier's writing, because shock horror, I haven't actually read any of her stuff before. I haven't even read Rebecca. So I think I might actually like find a physical copy of this book, either from the library or buying myself a copy, because I really enjoyed the plot. I just feel like I would have gotten more out of it had I been able to read it rather than hearing it acted out, because obviously when it's acted you only get the dialogue, whereas it was just missing all the prose and all the descriptive language, which I think would have just added to the atmosphere that little bit more. I also read a couple of books on my Kindle this month, which obviously I don't have with me. But the first one was All My Puny Sorrows by Miriam Taves, I think that's how you say it. I only really got this one because it was really cheap on the Kindle store, and I hadn't even heard of it before. One of her other books, which I now can't remember the name of, has been on my TBR for a while, so I recognised her name and I was like, oh well, that sounds interesting, and I obviously liked the sound of her other book, so I might as well try this one while it's on offer. And I really enjoyed it. Like, I thought it was going to be kind of heartbreaking and make me feel sad, because it's about two sisters, one of whom is kind of a bit down on her luck, single mum, has lots of affairs, unhappy job, like issues with divorce, all that kind of stuff. And her sister is a high-flying concert pianist with like an amazing life and a husband who loves her and loads of money. But the concert pianist sister is really suicidal and is basically in hospital for the whole of this book, and it's all about how her family deal with that and sort of the decisions they have to make of whether, you know, she should be kept alive or whether they should just accept that she's not happy. And I thought it was going to be really harrowing, but actually I found that it dealt with it in a really sensitive way. It wasn't too preachy, it wasn't too like suicide being thrust in your face. It was like really sort of discussing the issues surrounding it, how it affects family. Yeah, I just thought it was really beautifully written, and there was such a wonderful sense of nostalgia as well when they were talking about, you know, their childhood, and it's just really moving. The other ebook that I read this month was one that I had on review from NetGalley, because I signed up for that this month, so I've got lots of books accepted for review and I just really need to get on and read some more of them. The book that I got from NetGalley was a short story collection called When Giraffes Flew by Jeff Weddell. I'm going to be blunt, I hated this book. It's been a long time since I have hated a book quite as much as this one, and I felt so bad because it was the first book I've reviewed for NetGalley, and I was like, I should be saying nice things to the publisher, but I I couldn't find anything nice to say about it. In the end I was like, well, it's better to leave an honest review even if it's negative than not review it at all, because after all, like, they still need feedback, and also if I leave feedback then I'm more likely to get accepted for further books. So I was like, I'm not just going to let it slide, I'm going to be honest, because then at least we're both benefiting from it. I wrote a really long rant about this on Goodreads, and I've now sort of shoved it out my mind because I don't want to think about this book any longer. So basically I'm just going to read out what I wrote on Goodreads. A couple of fun short stories, namely the title story and the one about the postman, the name of which escapes me. In short, these stories were respectively about flying giraffes that swooped down and stole people never to be seen again, and a postman who hoards junk mail to stop his recipients having to deal with it. But the rest were mundane, misogynistic and utterly forgettable. I was so disappointed, as this has been sold to me as magical realism. Perhaps this was my own fault, maybe I interpreted the blurb in the wrong way, but it was anything but. There were a few stories that could be considered magical realism, such as the flying giraffes, but for the most part this collection focused on the struggles of poor little white men with cookie-cutter personalities. I could not get over the misogyny of these characters, and I'm still not sure whether it was supposed to be satirical, but the recurrence of quips about women's weight and wanting to fuck her until she's unconscious led me to believe that it's just a case of poor judgment on Wirrell's part. One particular line I'm still reeling over is, "It's all I can do not to simply attack her, rape her," which is one protagonist's view on his pregnant wife. Another issue I had with this collection was the fact that so many of the stories established virtually no sense of setting. It felt like I'd just been dropped in the middle of a situation and had to figure out what was happening, and while this work can work very well in some books, the brevity of these stories and the total blandness of the characters meant that it was nigh on impossible to establish what the story was actually about and where one's sympathies should lie. This left a really sour taste in my mouth. Basically sums it up. And it's really sad because everyone else on Goodreads gave it like 4 and 5 stars, so I had high hopes and now I've just completely smashed it. Now moving on to the physical books that I read this month, I read quite a few graphic novels. So the first graphic novel that I read was my very first book of the year, and that was The Black Project by Gareth Brooks. And this was really interesting because all the art is actually embroidered, which I thought was amazing. I have never seen a graphic novel that does this before, and I just thought it was so innovative and so fun, and I mean, it's a really creepy story. It's about a boy who decides to start sort of making himself girlfriends out of found objects he's got lying around, and he has to keep it a secret from all his friends and his family because that's not normal behaviour for what I assume is around a 12-year-old boy. And then yeah, just everything kind of goes wrong for him and it doesn't really work out, but it was still a really enjoyable read. The next graphic novel that I read was Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley, which I picked up at the start of the month with my book tokens, and I really enjoyed this one. I think I don't really know many people who have read it, and in this way I think it's quite underrated and I would really recommend you go and check it out. Basically it's about this girl called Katie who owns a restaurant, and she was happy with it for years, but now she's trying to get a new restaurant because she feels like she's sort of outgrown the first one and she's no longer in control. You know, there's another manager, she's having relationship issues, things are going wrong with this new restaurant that she's bought as it's being developed, and then she starts seeing this house spirit who says that she can change things in her life if she writes down what she wants to change and then eats the sort of magic mushroom that the house spirit provides her with. But she starts seeing this as a quick fix and eats the mushrooms for every single thing, and it causes like multiple timelines to appear because she's not thinking about the consequences of her actions. And just generally I thought it was really good fun, and I like the fact that Katie was not a perfect character. Like, there were so many moments where you were like, just learn from your mistakes, stop changing things, and she was so flawed and so selfish at times, but you couldn't help but love her because you know that that's what you'd do in that situation. If you were offered a quick fix to change absolutely anything in your life, you'd probably do it. So yeah, you can still sympathise with her even though you know that she's totally flawed. And yeah, I just thought the characters in this were really believable, and it was good fun, and I really liked the magic of it. And the final graphic novel that I read was Volume 1 of Morning Glories, which is a series about some students across the USA who have all been selected randomly to, well, they assume it's randomly, there's actually like another reason for this that you find out in book. They've all been selected to go to this very exclusive prep school, which is really, really creepy. It's nothing as it seems. All the teachers are demonic, there's like monsters in the basement, there's experiments going on, and they're trying to fight for their lives to get out of this school. It's really interesting, it's really fun. It really shocked me, there's a massive twist at the end, and basically I am so happy that I picked this one up because I loved it and it feels so good knowing that there's still 8 more volumes for me to read. Finally, I read 3 sort of normal novels this month. I finished his Dark Materials, so I finished off The Subtle Knife and I read The Amber Spyglass. And I'm so happy that I read these. I can't believe it's taken me so long. I feel like I can kind of appreciate them more at this age than I assume I would have been able to if I read them when I was younger, because obviously there's so much like religious allegory and anti-religion, I don't want to say propaganda, but you know, messages like that and discussing moral issues and things that I don't think I would have quite picked up on when I was younger. I love this series. I think it's one of the best series I've ever read, and I'm so thankful for Jen and Holly's read along, which really prompted me to start it, which I know was in December, and I did read the first one in December but only just read these this month. But either way, like, I'm just glad I persevered with it because I just think it's amazing. I still feel really, really emotional over it. Like, there were so many moments I was just like near tears, and like I would have to stop and throw the book across the room because I was so frustrated and sad at things that had happened, and it just made me feel all the things. Philip Pullman has broken my heart. The last novel that I read this month was American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis, which I've had on my bookshelf for a while. I think I picked it up in a charity shop a few years ago. I finally thought this month, I was like, I should actually, you know, read all these books that I've owned for years and I've never touched. So I decided to give this a go. I can't say I enjoyed it because enjoyed is the wrong word for a book like this. I certainly thought it was interesting. There's a lot of kind of narrative devices that I know some people have had gripes with, like the fact that the protagonist, or should that be the antagonist, seeing as he's a psycho killer, he constantly describes what he's wearing and what everyone else is wearing in immense detail, and there's some chapters they're just literally him discussing his favourite musicians' discographies and things like that, and his workout regimes. And I know that a lot of people who have read it have found that really dry and difficult to get over, but to me, I found that kind of, it helped with the characterisation of him as someone who's very clinical, very detached, very materialistic, and I think it really helped with the setting because obviously he's a Wall Street banker. This is taking place in the 80s where it's like this big financial boom and really money and possessions are everything at that time, and I think that this book portrayed it really, really well, and I thought it was such an interesting split between that kind of materialism in society versus what he feels he has to do to get out of it, i.e. raping and killing people. I'm not sure I would read it again just because it was so graphic, but I commend what Bret Easton Ellis was doing here and his social commentary in it. Finally, I read one poetry collection this month, and that is When I Grow Up I Want to Be Mary Beard, which I have discussed in my January book haul video. This is a poetry collection by this performance poet who is in her early 20s called Megan Beach. I think she's maybe like 1 year older than me, which is really, really sad. Like, I wish I could write like her. I feel so inadequate when I was reading these poems, but it's absolutely amazing. She's very feminist, very political, has a lot to say about modern life and what it's like to be a woman in your 20s, dealing with misogyny and conservative politics in Britain, and it's just absolutely fabulous. I read one of the poems Binding in my book haul video, but because I read that one there, I'm going to read a different one for this video because there are so many poems that I absolutely loved in this collection. So this one is the title poem, When I Grow Up I Want to Be Mary Beard. When I grow up I want to be Mary Beard, a classy, classic classicist, intellectually revered, wickedly wonderful and wise, full to brim with life while explaining the way in which Caligula died on BBC Primetime. And I would like her to shine, the kind inclined to speak her mind refined and blinding, yet I'm finding it tough to grow up in a world where Twitter is littered with abuse towards women, where intelligent, eminent, eloquent females are met with derision, because she should be able to analyse Augustus's dictums or early AD epithets without having to scroll through death, bomb and rape threats. Do not tell me that this is just the internet or a public figure deserves everything they get, because this isn't just about one academic, it's endemic in this society, enmeshed in sexist rhetoric. I cannot live accepting it, because when I grow up I want to be Mary Beard, to wear shiny Converse and converse on conquerors and pioneers, a sheer delight, an igniter of young minds but never a victim, like Minerva herself, a goddess of wisdom. She blows my mind. So that was everything that I read in January 2016. Hopefully I can keep the pace up for the rest of the year. I somehow doubt I will, but I may as well try. Basically, I find that I read more when I'm varying it, and I'm listening to audiobooks, I'm reading ebooks, reading graphic novels and poetry, and just basically shaking it up. I find it kind of motivates me to keep going. So hopefully I will have another big wrap up for you next month. But for now, goodbye.